In this video, I'm doing certain things differently so that I can press down the front trouser inlay. This is significantly better than the original method that I've shared for numerous reasons, because it removes the seam step on the waistband, it reduces the bulk in the waistband, and it preserves the inlay better. And it is also easier and faster. So this is the top front inlay pressed downwards towards the bottom of the trouser rather than up into the waistband. I use this method when I make trousers in combination with machining the waistband, which I have a video for. You ought to have a firm understanding of making trousers before this video may become useful to you, and you can find my accompanying trouser making series in the description. And if when you come back this is a useful video, or maybe you just like the video, then please do like the video. It is quite helpful to me. I like seeing it. The first small change we make comes as we are preparing the trouser when we apply the fly. Everything goes on the same as I went over in the original series, but we need to be a bit more precise here. Starting at the bottom, linen side up, sewing the fly on with a small centimetre seam allowance, as is usual. Stop shy a few centimetres from the waistline. Move the fly out of the way of the trouser and mark 1 centimetre below the mark stitches. Then mark that onto the fly. We need to machine up to that point and back tack from it securely. As we go on, we should prepare the fly in much the same way, pressing it over. The second thing that you need to do is make a box as we sew the top of the pocket onto the big facing. It is the same as what I did in the slanted pocket sample video. Pin the forepart to the big facing in the same way as usual, moving the back of the cilicia out of the way, not sewing through it at all. Machining down the edge of the pocket to the notch. Turning towards the front edge, then turning back up to the top of the inlay. What is important is that we need to cut down through the facings and the small facings cilicia. If the small facing and its cilicia isn't caught in the first line down the pocket, then it doesn't need to be cut. Doing this will give you the freedom to move the majority of the pocket down and out of the way of the waistband inlay. From here we can finish the pocket and put on the back trouser in much the same way as we usually like to. When we get to applying the waistband, it starts very similarly. Mark on the waistline and check the measurements. Get the waistband ready and marked up. Begin basting the waistband on in the normal way from the center back. Ensure the darts and seams are sitting correctly. At the side seam and the slanted pocket, you need to make sure the pocket is folded down below the waistline. We do not want to catch it in the seam. Make sure where the slant is that side of the cut is laying flat with the trouser. On the bearer side, continue basting it as we normally do to the end of the bearer. On the fly side, we will baste it to where the crease is on the center front. It is exceptionally important this time that the fly is not basted or sewn down to the trouser. This time, when we sew the seam, it will be one straight shot across the entire waistline. It is simplest on the bearer side, starting at the back as I usually might do, sewing a 1 cm seam allowance on the waistband seam. On the fly side, we need to back tack it on the center front, where we creased it. It will be back tacked level with where we back tacked the fly, the 1 seam allowance below the waistline. We mustn't sew through the seam allowances here though. Then we press the seam flat, like normal, removing the basting. We can now press the seam open, as in the front and the back this time. With the pocket out of the way, we can fold the whole waistband inlay downwards into the trouser. On the bearer side, this does extend all the way over the bearer. Since I had already put the silicea on this time, I need to cut away some of the seam allowance so that it sits neatly inside of it. Furthermore, we don't necessarily need to cut the top of the zip away, but it is folded down and covered with the bearer's silicea. On the fly side, the fly needs to be unfolded so that the inlay can be pressed down linearly before also being folded with the fly to crease it again. Meanwhile, the fly will still extend up into the waistband. Though as you get to lining the trouser, you may have to trim the top of the fly and zip to below the top of the waistband. Around the side seam, the inlay is going to sit through the cut we made into the box on the pocket. We may need to cut the inlay slightly higher so that it isn't pressing into the pocket. Instead of cutting and re-overlocking the top of the waistband inlay, I propose that the top edge is pinking sheared. It gives the trouser a flatter finish and doesn't require an overlocker. At this stage, we can lay the pocket flat and check that it sits nicely before doing the inside leg and everything else. Like I say, I usually use this waistband measurement over the original in combination with machining on the waistband lining. You can still use the original way of putting on the curtain and lining though. I want to be explicit that the curtains are placed in the same way. I'm pinning them this time, but they are in the same place. On the top sides this time, we can see the tops of the waistband seam allowance, so it's easier to place accurately level with the seam allowance, still placing the frontmost raw edges of the seams on the bearer seam and under the fly. From this stage though, you can fix the curtains and lining any way you happen to prefer.